Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Speaking with me now, I have Matt Shemwell with Bouchard Insurance. He's an executive vice president there. We're going to talk a lot about insurance, things you need to know, things you don't need to know, what kind of cut through the noise, what's important, where you're going, where things are going, and how you can kind of navigate through them here in the short term and long term. So, Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Scott, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Can you tell us just a little bit about you and Bouchard, and kind of just give us a little quick overview for everybody that might be listening, and then we can get into some of these topics and get right into it.
Sure. We are. I work for Bouchard Insurance. We are a region of Marsh & McLennan agency. We work with businesses, small, medium, and large in the Tampa Bay area, but also across the entire state of Florida. And then we obviously have a national presence. And our goal really is to advise them on anything from their business insurance to their general liability, workers' compensation, and we also work with them heavily on their employee benefits practice. So unprecedented times for sure, and certainly a lot of changes and adjustments that had to be made, but we've been able to do a really good job to help businesses pivot in this time of need.
So to say you've been busy in the last 2 or 3 weeks would be an understatement, as we know, and all of us have. But you're specifically employee benefits, employees, management of that, jobs, insurance is a huge factor of what people are trying to weigh. One, it's a big cost. Employees are also a large cost, but they're your most valuable assets and protection mechanisms too. So can you talk a little bit about just the types of conversation, what's going on in your customers' minds? We work a lot with manufacturers and small businesses and construction, but I know you have a mix of all types of clients, but they're all having very similar issues. So can you kind of go through in your own words just what you're hearing your clients say and how you're helping them navigate around that?
Absolutely, yeah. So we work with a variety of businesses, and we are in the senior living space, the construction space, manufacturing, retail, restaurant. I mean, we really run the entire spectrum there, but a lot of businesses have the same questions, right? What am I going to do with the decrease in revenues? That it didn't just go from, 100% of revenue to 80% of revenue that they expected. You have a lot of businesses that legitimately had to just cease operations. So what do I do in this case? Construction's a little bit different. There's some jobs specifically on what's been deemed essential, right? Essential building that's been going on. They're going to be a little bit of a lag there in terms of decrease in revenues. Obviously, if I was a construction business owner, I would worry about, where is my next job coming from? I think people have kind of hit pause on projects, or at least they're concerned about projects and where they're going to come from next. As it relates to current projects, I would continue to focus on what I focused on, before this kind of kicked into high gear in the United States, which is keeping job sites safe, making sure employees were following the safety practices that we put in place. From a workers' compensation perspective, any claims that happen now are going to affect businesses over the next 3 to 4 years in terms of workers' compensation pricing. So those are the things I would focus on, making sure I had safe environments and looking at it from a risk management perspective.
When your customers are coming to you now, what are the things that they're thinking about let me ask you this way. What are the things that when they're coming to you, what are the things that they're not thinking about at all that they really should be? Questions they should be asking you, topics they should be bringing up, and they're just not touching just because they may not be aware?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it seems like we get updates on this stuff hourly, right? I mean, it's moving so quickly. We have the bill in Congress that's being looked at right now. How is that going to affect them? Those types of things. I would say from a business insurance perspective, if your revenues are going to trail off quickly, you should be talking to your insurance consultant about adjusting that, right? So revenues and sales are a big part of how general liability premiums are determined. If you expect your revenues to go down significantly, your insurance consultant should be talking to the insurance carrier about lowering those to see if you can adjust the premiums down. I would definitely, that would be one area I would look at. The other would be if you're laying off employees temporarily, how's that going to affect your health insurance costs, and what does that do from your spend there? We've had a lot of clients, one I work with specifically, they laid off all of their hourly employees as of March 20th. So you're talking 130 or 140 employees out of 200 that aren't going to be covered on their insurance anymore. What type of expenses are going to impact the business there? So those are some big things we're talking about that they're not thinking of. I think unemployment is going to be a big question, right? This new bill is going to have an influx of money to people. If I'm trying to keep key employees around, what do I do from a salary continuation perspective? Do I want to pay 100% of their salary? Do I want to pay 50% of it? Where's the government money going to kick in, if it's going to kick in for some of these employees that I do want to keep around? So those are some questions I would be talking about with my insurance agent if I was a business owner now, that they're probably not thinking of yet, because they're still making adjustments to their business and reacting to what's happened over the last 2 to 4 weeks.
You bring up a great point with those items. And let's say, I'm a business owner and I ask my insurance agent that. What do I want my insurance agent to tell me? I mean, what do they need to be telling me? I mean, I think everybody worries. Some have great relationships with their insurance agents. Some have medium to no relationship. They just see it as a necessary evil. And they might ask the question, but might not know. In other words, they just have a blind trust to some degree, and they just don't know what they should be told.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really does depend from relationship to relationship, and who's handling your insurance. And again, some people do just see it as a necessary evil, and some see it as someone who's truly an advisor of their business. I think more than anything, they want information, and the information that the government has been sending out and that's coming across the news and the media is just so fast, and it changes really, like I said earlier, hourly. So I would want information first and foremost, and then I would want my insurance consultant to really distill it down to my business. Again, certain things are going to affect a hospitality business differently than they're going to affect a construction business. So I would want my insurance agent to really start to take the information that's out there and get it to where it's applicable to my business. And again, it's just one of those things where if you, for lack of a better term, have your fishing buddy as your insurance agent, I don't know how much information they're going to get you that's going to be applicable to your business. So those are things I would evaluate too. I would really want as much good information as possible that's going to help my business make a really good decision.
Going policy by policy, you mentioned the GL, general liability policy, workers' comp, and umbrella so far. Are there any specific terms, exclusions, endorsements that business owners should be looking at when they're reviewing those policies and get really granular on anything specific?
I think the biggest thing that's going to affect businesses right now is everyone's wondering if there's business interruption coverage, right? And typically, and this goes policy by policy, but typically things like viruses and communicable diseases are not covered when it comes to business interruption. What I would say is talk to your insurance consultant, see what your policy has in there in terms of exclusions. The other thing is, I think you're going to see the government step in, based on what I've read, and step in and hold carriers to helping out with business interruption due to COVID. I don't know what that looks like or who's going to pay for that or everything else, but that seems to be a way that the government might want to help from the insurance carrier side to help businesses say, here was a business interruption impact. Yes, the policy says it's not covered, but here's some money or a way we can get money back to businesses in addition to what they're doing with the bill that's been passed recently and going through that area. I think, again, business interruption would be something I would be having a conversation with my agent about.
Yeah. And look, these are extraordinary times, as you said. Cash flow is tight. Businesses are just trying to survive right now is the most important thing. Insurance costs many times are one of their higher priced fixed costs. And you mentioned looking at your revenue and making those calculations, any type of policy that's based off of the premium is based off of the revenue, and your now revenue projections are going to be significantly different. Getting ahead of that, I think, is very wise. In addition, is there, many companies are actually finance those premiums over a 10, 11 month period throughout the year. Do you know of any specific, or is there any questions they should be asking those financiers of the policies that could be a program that's out there or a different method or way that they could help get some relief?
Yeah, I think because we are in extraordinary times, like you mentioned, I think it's worth having your insurance consultant or your insurance agent have conversations with those carriers to come up with a plan to maybe delay those payments a little bit, and just, again, having open lines of communication with your carriers. Because we're in extraordinary times, I think they're going to make more practical business decisions than maybe they normally do in terms of timelines of payments and cancellations of policies. I think they're going to be more forgiving than they have been on those types of areas. So again, it's just utilizing your insurance consultant and insurance agent to have those conversations with your carriers, so that, again, cash flow can remain as in the best position that it can possibly be as it relates to insurance costs and premiums and everything else.
And when they go to the carriers, what is the most important things to those carriers for them to see to make those decisions, versus so that our customers or people here in this video can separate themselves from what might be business owners that are trying to take advantage?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the biggest thing is, using an insurance consultant that understands your business and can really tell that story to the insurance carrier of, hey, look, we're a restaurant and the government asked us to shut down our operations. We could not pivot to a takeout or delivery model. So, hey, we had to actually shut our operations down, and certainly our revenues are drastically decreased by that. Can we look at, delaying our payment on our general liability and on our umbrellas? And can we look at decreasing our revenues and sales numbers on those policies so that premiums are more appropriate than what they would have been had this not happened? I think the insurance consultants that can best tell those stories to the carriers are going to be the ones that have successful conversations with them to, again, kind of elongate out the time it takes to get those premiums back to the carriers.
Yeah. And look, what I'll add to that, what I can tell you from my own experience and from customers that have talked to us as well, is right now in these kind of times is how you really want to start to evaluate your circle of professionals that you work with, whether it's your insurance carriers, your attorneys, your bankers. I mean, how people help you now and the way they behave now is the best indicator of whether or not you're with the right person or not. That is my own personal opinion. I know that's shared by some of our customers and clients. And I think Matt touched on that right there. Being able to tell that story versus there's ways to do things and there's ways to do things. Going to your insurance, your agent, going to your insurance carrier and saying, look, I got a client, they need a discount. What's the best you can do? Is way different than the way that Matt framed that. And if you go back and rewind this and listen to how Matt framed that story about a restaurateur and the way he told that story, that is the difference maker between a good agent and just a basic regular agent. And that's also the difference maker between a carrier who's going to listen and help you versus a carrier that's going to think no. So I just wanted to point that out, Matt, because whether we're talking to accountants or, whether it was folks we had on here earlier related to doing bonds and telling the story about the surety, or whether it's a consultant broker helping network with a bank, how that story is told is more important sometimes than even the story.
There's no question. And just to add on to that, I mean, crises like this, right? Whether, and again, this is an unprecedented one, but even things like going through a hurricane in Florida or any other type of crisis, they tend to exacerbate challenges within the business. And so again, they don't go away, they just get worse. And so the same challenges that business owners had before, a big light gets shined on those now. And again, having those professionals to help you, like you said, whether it's someone on the legal side or someone from the consulting side of insurance, banking, accounting, all of those things become super important to dial in on. Is this someone I really want to continue to work with? Were they there for me in the time of need? Did they give me sound advice and great information? It becomes that much more important in times like this.
Related to the recent bill that just came out and has passed, is there anything specifically in there that you think should be highlighted right now? I mean, there's a lot of things in there and there's a lot of information. And so I'm not trying to ask an unfair question, but if we're just an owner of a business and you're dealing with the type of things we've dealt with, and you had to thumb through that bill or go to a website and get the information you need, is there the hierarchy of 1, 2, 3s that you want to know about the most, and we just focus on those?
Yeah, it's going to be tough here for the next 2 or 3 days. I remember when ACA came out in 2010, and we didn't know how that was going to impact businesses and what they were going to have to do when, employers over 50 were mandated to provide healthcare, right? That took some time to sort of true itself up. I think if I was a business owner, I'd want to know, A, how are my employees that I potentially just let go, how are they going to be impacted, and how can I help them get access to money that the government might provide for them from a unemployment or reemployment perspective. The second thing would be, if I need additional cash flow and money, what's being sent down to the SBA, and how can I get my hands on that in terms of either a small interest business loan? What does that look like, and how's that going to help my business? There's a tax credit portion of some of this for some employers, and how they're going to be able to get their hands on some of that money that they have to continue to provide in terms of money to their employees, and the impact that's going to have on their business. Those are the things I think I would want to look at in the first, 7 days of this thing. And as this bill gets written and notices are sent out from the Department of Labor, then I would get to the next level of, okay, we got through that first week. What does this really look like long-term for my business? And I would start to do some analysis from that perspective. But based on what I've read and seen, this really seems to be a bill to try and keep the economy going for the time being. And then I think, our markets and the great economy of America and all of those that are of an entrepreneurial mindset, we're going to have to figure it out once that first initial influx of money comes down to the business owners and into our employees' hands.
I agree. To summarize here, what I've heard is, again, a lot of the same themes that we might have heard in some of the previous guests. Is communication is key. In this particular case, get on the phone with your insurance agent and educate them on the impact this has had. Let them know what's going on, what's happening in your business, what you foresee happening in the short, medium, and long term. Certainly, if you're making layoffs or contemplating layoffs, reach out and ask what the implications of each of those things could be to you and your business, what your options are, understand what your insurance cost and premium impact could be, and how you can help influence that in a positive way. And last but not least, get on the phone and really communicate with your team, all the professionals, whether it's your insurance agent or other. Anything, Matt, that you would add to that from just in summary of the takeaway for the video here?
No, I think you hit it on the head there. Businesses are going to have to pivot and change too over the next week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. And we don't know how long this thing is really going to last in terms of shutting down and quarantining and staying at home. So constant communication is extremely important. As businesses change their models and pivot to do different things over the next 2, 3, 4 months, keep your business professionals in mind, specifically around insurance, attorneys, certainly from a banking perspective. It's important for them to understand what you're trying to do as a business owner, so that, again, they can tell the story to other people that are necessary for the business.
Matt, thank you very much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. Everyone listening, I hope you found very helpful. I hope this was beneficial to you and gave you some guidance. And be well. Thank you.